Hey everyone, welcome back to Rhythm Railroad. I'm working on my signals tonight and I figured I'd make a video just to kind of show you what I do to, you know, to make my signals work correctly and in sync with each other. So I pretty much finished all the sections with the exception of one. And what I mean by that is that the hardware that I'm using to control the signals, which is a Digitrax SE8C, is set up for 8 drivers. And each driver can control basically 4 lights fully, meaning a red, a yellow, and a green within each head. So we have one more block left, one more, driver left, and I'm going to be basically placing that in Whitehall, right here. So the idea is that I can get the same setup as I've been doing within the other, sidings and interlockings, to be able to control that the same way, and so that all the signals speak to each other. So just some basic information. And by the way, this is not meant to be like a very sophisticated signaling setup. I'm doing very, very basic logic with this stuff. And it's just meant basically to run almost like as an automatic block signaling system, ABS. Although I do have the opportunity or the ability with this software to also kind of do it like CTC. And what I mean by that is that you could change the aspect. You can change the lights to, any color you want just by clicking on it. So you're not forced to be with one or the other depending on what your tortoise machine is doing. With that said, right now, the lights are actually controlled by the turnout, but not from the turnout. It's controlled from the SE8C that's talking to the decoder that's controlling that tortoise machine at each turnout. So I know that sounds like a lot, but basically what's happening is the signals are independent of everything, but they are communicating through a data cable that allows them to also, see what's going on physically on the layout with the turnouts. So here's what happens normally. The SE8C is divided into 8 drivers. Let me show you that here. So in the manual for the SE8C, you can see the 8 drivers there on the left-hand side. And each driver has 4 sections to them. So for example, driver 1, you can see kind of like highlighted in gray there, is split up, if you look at the orientation, into A1 main, then right next to that is A2 diverging. Then you get into B main and C siding. Now what that means is that the A1 and A2 is referring to a 2-headed signal, which would probably be placed from a main line into some kind of division, so some kind of turnout that would give you 2 routes. And then on the other side, if you look at the right side, the B main and the B siding would be those actual tracks that I'm referring to. So that would be basically the signals that would be facing the opposite way, that would be looking at the main line. So those would only need 1 head each. So 1 for the B and 1 for the C. And that's basically what I do on my control panel, on my dispatcher panel. So let's look at Fort Edward, for example. Fort Edward has a turnout here and a turnout here, which allow you to have a main line and then also a siding for that area. So you need a set of signals on this side for the trains that are coming in to the siding or to the town, and then you need a set of signals on this side for the trains that are going in the opposite direction. And by the way, my layout is basically everything on this side is south and everything on this side is north. So a train, this train here at Saratoga Springs is actually heading north this way. So you would have to go through this signal interlocking. So if you take a look, there's always two headed signals on the main line facing the siding, and then on the opposite side you have single headed signals facing the main line. And we're going to talk about how I make those in just a minute. But what you need to know is that the turnout located here with the tortoise machine is talking to a decoder that then talks to the SE8C, which then controls the lights. So it's not like CTC where, you know, the dispatcher would, you know, switch the turnout and then give a signal accordingly. It's more automatic. So for example, if I hit that turnout and change the route to the diverging route, you would see these lights switch and these lights switch automatically, because it's dictating what the possibilities are for that train to either go north or south on. So right now you have a green over red, which in my world and what Digitrax recommends is that the top light dictates what's happening on the main line basically, and then the bottom light dictates what's happening on the diverging route, so the siding. On the other side, you have a green by itself, which basically says, hey, you can continue on the main because the turnout is lined up. And over here on the siding, you have a red because it's saying, hey, the switch is against you, so you cannot continue. You have to wait here until that turnout is lined up for you. So you'll see that as soon as I click on the turnout, everything changes. So you hear the tortoise machine going, and then you see that now all of a sudden you have a red over yellow. And then this switched to red from green, and this switched to yellow from red. So what is this telling you? Well, the train that's at Saratoga Springs is going to come this way, and then it's going to notice a red over yellow. So the yellow on the bottom basically says, hey, you're going to be taking the siding, so you have to slow down. You can't go green, which is full speed ahead, allowed speed anyway, because you're going to be taking that turnout and it's not set up for the main line. And likewise, if there's a train sitting on the siding here that's heading to the main line, it has to go through that turnout in the diverging route, so in a thrown position. And that could potentially be dangerous for the train because it's got to, go through that curve there. So that's why it's showing a yellow. Now, I set that up that way. It doesn't have to be that way. You could put a green here and also here. So that would basically say, and by the way, I don't really think that's what it means, that this is the diverging and that's the main. I think it just means they're talking about speed. So, for example, a red over yellow would be a slower speed than red over green, right? But it's still slower than green over red. If you had a green on top and a red on the bottom, that would be the fastest speed that you could, legally do on this track. That's allowed. But you can have a yellow over green. No, yellow over red, which basically means you're going straight, but you got to go easy. You got to go slower. So I think they call it restricted speed. Okay. And again, I'm not like a pro at this, so I'm calling these things like, words that are probably not appropriate for the railroad, but whatever. So that's basically the way I see it. And like I said, you can click on them and switch them if you want to. So let's say I want to upgrade that signal for this train, I can make it green, or let's say I want to make it red. I'm not ready for that train to go in because whatever, there's something going on there. I could do that, and then obviously I could put it back to where it was originally by clicking on it. So you do have some kind of control, And I should mention that the train does have the ability to knock down the signals as it travels from block to block, like the real trains do in real life. And that's part of the logic that I'm going to show you when we set this up. So I'll turn out to the main line once again. You'll see that everything goes back to where it was, and there you go. So that's a very basic explanation of what I'm using to control my signals. Now we're going to work on Whitehall right now, so you understand how to use JMRI to set up your signals and go through all the logic programming. So the first thing you need to understand is that JMRI has to be set up. The signals in JMRI have to be set up in many different steps so that it can actually understand what you're trying to do. So the first thing you need to do is actually add signals here. Now, you're not adding signals to your layout. You're just adding basically the message that you're sending out through the wires to your physical signals when you actually hook them up. So, for example, all these signals that I set up right here don't actually have signals in the layout, but they're acting as if there were signals there. And when I do hook up wires to those drivers that I explained to you before on the SC8C, those wires are going to speak to the SC8C and then also to the signals, and that's when the lights are going to change accordingly. On the other hand, I set these up the same exact way, but there are actually physical signals here that are lit up, and they're doing exactly what these lights are doing here on the panel. So the first thing you need to do is actually add those signals, like I said. So the way you do that is that you go to your main screen, which looks like this. This is your JMRI main screen. And what you want to do is you want to go to Tools. You want to go to Tables. Oops. And then you want to go to Signals. And then in Signals, you're going to see 4 categories. What we're interested in right now is just signal heads. We're trying to just actually set up the signal heads. So you click on that, and then you get this display, which is showing all the signal heads that I've already created. So as you can see, there's some signals in staging. There's some signals at Fort Edward. There are some signals at turnout 111. Oh, and there are also some signals at the Helix. Now, the reason why this isn't consistent, meaning like there's an actual town name here, and this is just turnout 111, was because these were the first turnouts or signals that I actually assigned on the layout, and at that point I wasn't sure what that town was going to be. So all that stuff will be renamed, just like you see Fort Edward here. So this is actually Saratoga Springs, so I'm going to change all this to Saratoga Springs, and then it'll reflect correctly. But it doesn't really matter. You can call it whatever you want, as long as you keep, you stay consistent with what you're calling it and then what you're assigning those heads to. Okay, so the signals that I have here are the ones that are already up there, but I need to add more. So what you do is you go down to the bottom of the screen where it says Add, you click on Add, and then you get this panel, and I like to move it down here because it's just easier to see things. And then the first thing you have to select is the output. So, and there are many different signal hardware boards that are out there, and JMRI understands a lot of them, but the one I'm using is a Digitrax SC8C 4 aspect, and they're all 4 aspects. So don't worry about the aspect part of it. All you got to know is that it's SC8C. So you click on that, and then you need a username. So as you can see up here, it says username, and that's where you got to actually assign a name. So we're looking to do, I'm going to try to type and not shake around too much, but Whitehall is the location. And what I like to do is say whether it's the south part of the siding or the north part of the siding. So in this case, it's the south part, so I label it south. And then I need to label it, label the address for the turnout. And the address for this turnout is 233. And then the last thing I do is add the description of the actual signal head. So in this case, we're going to do the top head of the main line that's facing the two tracks, the siding and the main. So that's called A1 as dictated in the manual, like I showed you before. So A1 is the first category you see there next to the driver. You see driver's socket, then you see light aspect, and then you see A orientation. So A1 is what we're trying to assign right now. Now, what you got to do next is, let's say you set up some signals before, like all these that are set up right here. If you decide to change things around, well, these are set up already, so you can select from that list that right here. So those are all the ones that are there, and then you have some that are just automatically placed there. But what we want to do is create a new one because we don't have that address in the system yet. So we're going to hit create new, and what you're going to do is type in L for LocoNet and T for turnout, because that's what it's going to be looking at. So what you want to do there is basically put in the address that they're telling you to put in from the manual. So like I said, I've taken up all the drivers already with the exception of 6. So we're looking to put all the addresses that you see here in this block at 6 according to what it says on the orientation. So the first thing is you wanted to be able to show the red and the green. So that's, if you can see here, 297T is 297 thrown and 297 closed. And that basically is just telling you what Digitrax does to control one or the other. So on switch mode in Digitrax, if you put that address in 297 and you throw it, you'll get a red light. And if you put 297 and you close it, you'll get a green light. Okay? At the same time, if you put 298 and you throw it, you'll get a yellow. And if you put 298 and you close it, you'll get a flashing yellow. Those are the only possibilities you have. So what we want to do is first figure out the red and green. So 297 is the first address. So that's what we're going to put in here. So you're saying A1, which is the top light, is going to read 297 for the, for the address for that red and green. And if you can see here, it actually gives you like a green signal, which tells you that, yes, that's acceptable. If it was incorrect, that would not be there. In fact, I think, yeah, it would be red like that. So 297 is an acceptable address, so that actually checks it for you, which is kind of cool. And then the second part, the second turnout, it's not really a turnout, it's just an address that it's looking for. So we call that LocoNet turnout. And by the way, I like to do everything in caps. It's just consistent, and I think some things can actually get screwed up if you do the wrong, if you do caps or if you do lowercase. So just keep it consistent. The next one will be 298, and that's for your yellow and your flashing yellow. Okay. So again, it's not that you're actually assigning a turnout. It's that you're just looking at the address that the manual is telling you. Okay. So again, that's A1 in driver 6. And as you can see, I'm going to try to get real close. Driver 6 for the red and green is 297, and for the yellow and flashing yellow is 298, and that's what we have assigned. The next thing we have to do is assign the A2 column. And the A2 column for driver 6 is 299 and 300. So before we do that, we need to click on create. You can see these both check out, so that's good. Create, and what that does is it adds it to the list on top here. So we should have a white hole up here. There it is, and it's telling you that it's the description we put in, and it's A1, so we know it's the top head. Now you can keep this window open and just keep adding to it. You don't have to close it out and start again. So it already, you have that selected. You already have the title in, but all we're gonna do is change A1 to A2 because that's the lower head of that signal post. All right, or signal mast. So now you're looking at the lower head, okay? And those addresses that are on the manual are 2 addresses higher than this. So A1 was 297, 298. A2 would be 299 and 300, like I pointed out before. So you create new. You go to 299 here. It checks out. And then create new here. And you do 300 for this one. And that checks out. Oops, hold on. It could be 30 if you want it to be, but that checks out for 300. All right, so then when you hit create, you'll see that it pops up. It should pop up right under the other one. There it is. So let me just move this out of the way, and you can see we have A2 now. All right, so now that's the signal mast that is, let me just show you on the main board here, similar to what this would be. So you got A1 and A2, and you have everything basically assigned for those 2 heads to basically light up, okay? Now, the next thing is, let me go back to my main list here. You need to add a mast that only has 1 light or 1 head on the main line heading toward the main line, or on the diverging track, which would be the siding heading toward the main line. Okay, so we need those 2 heads created. So we're gonna go to add, and let me just see if the other one is still open, because I don't want to have to type all that stuff in again. No, unfortunately I lost it. Okay, so we're going to write, once again, Whitehall. Yeah, once you leave this screen, it kind of like resets it. So Whitehall, we want it to be the southern part, so south. And then we also want it to be turnout 233. And again, this is just for me. You can name it whatever you want, but this information helps me locate things a lot easier. And the head that we're looking to do now is, since we did A1 and A2, this one's just called plain old B. And B is for the main line. Let me show you on the manual here. As you can see, if you go to B, which is, it says main, right, C would be siding. So B, if you scroll down to driver 6, the addresses you're looking for are 301 for the red and the green, and then 301, 302 for red and green, and then 302, oops, where am I here? Oh, sorry, 301 for the red and green, whether it's thrown or closed, and then 302 for the yellow and the flashing yellow, which would be thrown or closed. Okay, so those are the 2 addresses we're going to add for the B signal. Okay, so going back here. So, the reason why this is blank is because when I exited the screen, it automatically blanked it out. But remember, we're dealing with an SC8C4 aspect. So once you put that in there, it eliminates that that other window that was just sitting there waiting for information. Okay, then we're going to create. Remember that we talked about the B addresses being 301 for the red and yellow, for the red and green, and then 302 for the yellows. So the next one here would be 302. All right, and that's for the B. So we're gonna create. And then the last one is the B. The last one we need is the C. So we're gonna go here and we're going to change that to C. And this would be for the siding. So we just basically go to the next 2 addresses. So it would be 303 and 304. So here we're gonna create new. We're gonna change to 303. and then create new, and 304. And once we hit create, it'll add it once again to the panel. So there it is. So you're always going to end up with 4 aspects, hence why this says 4 aspects. Okay, that's the only possibility you have. There's tricks to do things other ways, but I haven't learned them yet, but I've read about them. So once I figure that out, using the auxiliary and things like that, you know, we'll go to that. Oh, by the way, just a side note, I'm using signals that have literally 3 separate lights, but I would assume if you have a searchlight that turns 3 different colors, it would be the same situation. You just have to look in the manual to see how you set those up. But seems to be like this, the simplest way to do things with Digitrax would be 3 separate lights for, you know, for one head, and then 3 separate lights for the next head, and so on, so forth. So yeah, so again, you have 4 aspects. You have your top light of your double-headed mast, you have your bottom light of your double-headed mast, then you have your main single-headed mast for the main line, and then you have your siding single-headed line for the siding. All right, so once you're done with this, you can just close this out, and you can close this out, and now we're going to the panel. So we're gonna basically set up the same thing as here, over here. But you have to create those heads. So here's how we do this. You need to go into editing mode with JMRI, which basically is, the shortcut is Control E. So if you hit Control E, it puts you in editing mode. And the way you know you're in editing mode is because all this stuff pops up, all these control points and circles and things and squares pop up. And also you'll see all of these options pop up here, okay? So what we wanna do is we wanna look for signal head icon. I already have it clicked because that's what I was working on anyway. And then you'll see there's a drop down here. So you click on the drop down and it gives you that list that you created on the other panel. So there are all of the signal heads you created. Now we're looking for the white hole ones. Okay, so I always like to start with A1 and work my way down. So you click on A1, and now anywhere you place that signal head, it's going to be there. Now you have to hit shift and left click at the same time. So I got to put the phone down for a second so I can do that. So here goes. Okay, so once you do that, what you're going to get is basically a dark signal. There's no light on it right now. Okay, then this could be, if you right click on it, it can be dragged, it can be dragged to anywhere you want. If I can actually grab it, there it is. So we're gonna put it over here, but as you can see, it's actually facing the wrong way. The little stem should actually be on that side, which dictates that it's facing the, the siding. So what you gotta do is right click on it, and then you're gonna get a list of things you could do with it. And I like to just rotate it using this option. Otherwise you got to type it in. So I just do it once. It basically gives you a 90 degree rotation, and then you do it again, and it puts it in the right place. That's how I do it. Anyways, so this is going to be your A1, your top signal. Now you need to make the bottom signal. So you do it the same way, and then you also do it the same way for these. But the only good thing about setting these up is that when you click them in, they're going to be in the correct position. You don't have to turn them like this one. So I got to turn one more, and then I got to do these. So I'll be right back. I'm going to do that, and I'll be back. All right, so I added the 2 signal masts here, which is A1 and A2. And the reason why I didn't add the other ones yet is because I wanted to show you that you have to select them. You can't if you just keep clicking, you're only going to get A1 signals. Okay, because that's what was over here before. So you need to actually select the head that you want to put in the layout, and then click it in. So let me see if I can do this. I'm gonna put it right here. Shift, click, and then there it is. Okay, so this is B. So I'm gonna grab it, and B remembers for the main line. So I'm going to put it on the main line facing the single main. And I try to get them as close as I can to the track because I think it just looks neater. Um, that's good enough. And I like to line them up with the other signals, obviously. And then you got to go to the next one. So then the last one that's left is C. So you select C. And you introduce it into the layout by pressing Shift and left click. There it is. And again, you don't have to turn it because it's already facing in the correct direction. So you just grab it, you drag it up to the siding, because remember C is for the siding, and you drop it where you think you want it. Okay? Now, you can see that all these are dark because we haven't assigned anything to them yet. Okay? So the way you do that is you go back to the main panel, which I showed you how to do before. I should have just not closed it, but you go to Tools, and you go to Tables, you go to Signals and Signal Heads. And then you're going to see that in this panel, there are options to turn, to switch the lights. So you can see that all my Whitehall lights are dark right now. So what I do is I just start with red on everything. So I'm just going to put everything on red. And then that's going to switch automatically anyway when you add the logic. But at least you know that you'll have some kind of color when you see it next. So here, let's go back to the panel. And, oh, by the way, always save your work a lot, like as you go through it, because you don't want anything bad to happen. It doesn't matter if you save it 1,000 times. So Control S, and then it's gonna ask you to overwrite. So you just overwrite everything. So now, look at Whitehall. We actually have all the signals we need for that control point. And then they're all in red because we selected everything to turn red. Now here's where it gets a little bit more interesting. You have to basically assign logic to every one of these heads. So we'll start with A1. You right click on A1, and then what you do is you go down to where it says Edit Logic. When you hit that, you're gonna get this window here. And this is where you can really play around with how you want your lights to actually, reflect the way the train's gonna behave. So the first thing I do, and you don't have to do it in this order, but the first thing I do is I select whether it's a main leg or a diverging leg of the turnout. Now, because you're on the main, the signal is a main leg of the turnout, okay? So that's basically saying it's on the single track side of the turnout. It's not on the split side, okay? And once you do that, all that's really telling you, or telling the software is, hey, look for a turnout that's on the main line. So what I do next is I go to this thing that says red when turnout, and then you have a drop down. So that turnout, remember, is 233. Now I don't know if I actually named it 233 because it's been a while, but let's see if we can find it here. It might be under something. There we go. On the Whitehall South. That's the one. Okay. So what you're telling the software, or what you're telling the computer to do, is tell that signal to turn red when the turnout at Whitehall South is in the throne position. Okay. So the reason why you want that to happen is because you're talking about a main line, a main leg. So if it's thrown, that means that it's against, what you want. Okay. If it was the other way around, if it was divergent track, it would be the opposite here, and you'll see that that's what happens. Now, the next thing I do, which I think is important if you want to see the signals actually drop as you go, is I just assign a protection message for the following track. Just that. You can go much deeper. You can go 4 tracks ahead or 5 tracks ahead if you want. 5 blocks, I should say. But on the drop down, what I do is I select what's immediately in front of it. So what's immediately in front of that is you want the main line of the Whitehall interlocking. So let's see if we can find it. I think I called that I didn't call it Whitehall because it wasn't set up at that point. I think I called it, let's see, gate. What did I call it? Gate to closet is I think what I called it. But that's not what I'm looking for. What I'm looking for is Whitehall. Oh, here it is. I did call it. Okay. Whitehall yard. And I want the Whitehall siding, which is what I just called the entire section. Okay. But I want the main, not the siding. So this is what I want, A12. Okay, sorry about that. It's just that I've been switching things around a lot and I want to make sure that I keep track. So I'm going to have to go back and clean all that up anyway. So what you're saying is, hey, you have to behave this way by turning red when this turnout is thrown. But if a train is occupying this block, you have to turn this red anyway because there's a train ahead. That's what you're saying. And again, if you wanted to go further with the next block and the next block, for whatever reason, that's what you would do. Now, I'm just gonna, it automatically defaults to red and green when you do it this way. If you wanted to turn the light yellow, you could select limited speed or restricted speed and even have it flash. This is where you would do that, okay? But I don't want to do that for the main line. So I'm gonna hit apply, and then I'm going to go back to the panel, and now what you're going to see is that at Whitehall, all of a sudden, automatically, you have a green or a red, which is saying, hey, that turnout is set up to keep going straight or on the main line, so there's no danger. You can go full speed ahead. Okay, now again, there's a way to make that switch. I'm going to show you that later, but for right now, we're just going to keep it like that. Okay. Now, the bottom needs to also have some kind of logic, because what I wanted this to do is the same thing I did back here, where it turns yellow when this is thrown. Now, remember, the logic for the top head is already set to turn red when this is thrown. So let's see what happens when I throw it. There it goes. So it turns red. Okay, now the bottom one's not doing anything, and these aren't doing anything because they're not assigned yet. There's no logic. So I'm going to turn it back to the main. This turns green because now it understands what it needs to do. Now, the bottom light, you right click on that, you go to edit logic, just like before, and you get that same panel. But now you're talking about a diverging leg, which is what you want the train to look at, or the signal to look at. So we're going to click on diverging now because we're trying to get into the siding. And again, I go to the turnout first. So it's saying turn red when turnout Whitehall south, right? It's the same turnout that we were talking about before, is closed. So as you can see, now it's different. Now it's saying, hey, if this thing is going on the main line, we're talking about diverging. We want to go the other way. So turn it red, because otherwise, we're going to be against it, or there's going to, we're going to have a collision. Then obviously, you have to go to the same thing over here for the protection. So you're going to protect, since we're going to the siding, you're going to go to Whitehall siding, which is A14. Okay, so I'm going to click on that. And now this signal is looking at that track in particular to protect it from anything else. Okay. Now the only other thing is that because this is diverging, I like to make it a slower speed. So I'm gonna click on limited speed here, and what that's gonna force the signal to do is turn yellow rather than automatically turn green. Okay. Now if I wanted to have it, restrict the speed, I could do that, or even flashing, I could do that there, like I said before. Okay. So you hit apply, and you can just go right to the panel. And what you're going to notice is that suddenly this turned green. Oh no, here we are. I'm like, what's going on there? Okay. What you're going to notice is this is still the same. Why? Because the turnout is still set for the main line. Now, here's a problem. There's a train sitting on the siding. So watch what happens when I click on the turnout. This doesn't turn yellow because the signal, the block that I asked it to protect is occupied. And that's exactly what I want to happen. If there's a train heading north here, and it's in this block, if that was yellow and it kept going, it would smash into this train. So the idea is that the signal is saying, hey, I'm supposed to turn yellow right now because this is on the diverging route, but there's a train right there. So I got to stop whatever is coming this way. That's why it's still red. If I move this train out of this block and I put it in Ticonderoga block, that would automatically turn back to yellow, as long as this is thrown. Okay, because again, once I switch it again, it goes back to where it was before. Okay, so even though you're not seeing anything, it's actually set up to turn yellow. Now, let's go to the next signal, which is the main line. I always go in that order. So you right click on the main line, single mast, and then what you do is you edit logic just like before. Then you're talking about a main leg of the turnout, right? Because it's on the main line. What turnout do you want to look for? Well, the same one. We're still talking about that south Whitehall turnout. So you look for it. There it is, Whitehall South. And then what are we protecting? Well, we're in the main line, so we don't have to worry about yellow lights. Okay, we're gonna go green for now. Okay, the drop down is you need to watch out for this thing here, right? This block, because the train is going in that direction, right? That's the only thing that this light cares about, or the signal cares about, is the next thing on the main line. So you don't have a choice here to go one way or the other, okay? So that's why we picked main line, and now we're gonna select that block. And that block is called, I think it's A9, second level gate to closet. Because again, I didn't have a town set for that yet at that point. So let me just make sure that's the one. Yeah, A9, okay? So now we're set for this thing to turn green when the turnout is closed, but when it's thrown, it's going to turn red. That's what this is telling it, okay? So that's all we need for that. We're going to hit apply. As you can see, it went right to green because it's closed, okay? So let's go back to the panel, and I'm going to throw that turnout. Watch what happens. It goes to red because it knows that if there's a train heading in that direction, it can't go any further. The switch is against you. So it's telling you you can't go any further than that, and there's no train here. If there was a train sitting on this block and this was like this would still be red. That's the difference. Okay, so you don't have to have the block detection, but I think it's more fun that way. And I like to see the signals drop once the train has gone through. So we have one more left. So you do the same thing. This is a right click, edit logic. We're in diverging route because it's deciding. So we're gonna go diverging route. What is the turnout? Well, the same one as always. One to the way at the bottom, Whitehall South, okay? And you can see this is telling you the opposite. So now red, when Whitehall South is closed, because that's a diverging track, all right? And what are we protecting? Well, remember, there's only one way to go. So it's that A9 block again. So click on that. But the only difference is since this is gonna be a twisty turny route, right? I want that to be a slower speed. So we're gonna hit limited speed, and that's gonna make the light turn yellow rather than green. So that's all you need for this, okay? You hit apply, and you should be good to go. So go back to the panel again, and now you're gonna see that the turnout is closed, and that's why there's a red light on that signal that we just programmed, because this train that's sitting here can't go anywhere, right? It's got no clear path here. So as soon as I click on the turnout, watch what happens. Now it turns yellow because it's saying, hey, even though there's a train here, you can proceed. You just got to go slow because you're going to go through that turnout, not in a straight route, so you have to go slower. And then there's no train waiting on the opposite side of that, so you have a clear path. Again, if there was a train sitting here, this would be red, even though the turnout is set up for that line. Okay, so once again, if I click on it, it goes to red again because there's nowhere for that train to go. Now, the last thing I want to show you is that when you click on the heads, so right click on A1, there's an option here. It says when clicked, change aspects, okay? But I like to just go red, yellow, green, rather than red, then flashing red, then yellow, then flashing yellow, you know, so all these things. So I just keep it simple. So I do a cycle of 3 aspects, which is what that is. It's just solid red, solid yellow, or solid green. That's just my choice. You don't have to do it the other way. I also have noticed that the SC8C doesn't understand that very well. So when you click any flashing, like if you force it to flash green, it doesn't know what to do. It's like all over the place. So that's why I keep it simple. So basically, you can do that with every one of them. So here's A2. We're gonna go to the when clicked. We're gonna pick the 3 cycles. Then you do B. When clicked, go to 3 aspects, and then C. When clicked, go to 3 aspects. And once again, you want to hit save because you don't want to lose all that stuff you just did. So hit save. Now, that's basically the end of it. That would be in my layout completed signal section. Okay. Now, in order to get out of this edit mode so it looks cleaner, you hit Control E, and all those things go away. And now you can see it's a nice, neat looking interlocking here, where you can still click the turn out and it turns, you know, the lights the way we discussed before, or you can go back. So that's basically. So here's the last thing I want to show you guys, and that is how you can force any one of these signals to turn the color you want it to turn. So the first thing you got to check, and I'm going to go back into edit mode, is that this is the light I want to switch, that it's in that 3 cycle aspect, which is that. So I'm going to switch that, and I'm going to make sure the other ones are also. So I'm going to switch this guy. Yeah, this one I did a long time ago before I learned that, so I want to make sure that I can do it here also. So 3 cycles and 3 cycles. Okay. All right, so I'm gonna get out of edit mode. And then again, the Saratoga Springs signal that was green, you just saw, I'm gonna turn to yellow. So if I click on it, it goes to red, and then if I click on it again, it goes to yellow. Now let's see if that actually translates to the actual signal, which is sitting right here. And there it is. So you can see that that signal turned yellow now. And again, if I want to switch it to anything, I could do it. So if somebody's dispatching and they want to upgrade the signal, let's say they had it on yellow, but they see that there's nothing in front of them, you can just click that to green. Or if something happens and you need to stop the train, you go to red. So even though there's a clear path there, now the dispatcher decided, hey, we got to stop for a second. So it's all red at this point. Okay. So that's basically all there is to what I do for signal control. And I do want to apologize for my old school way of doing this, which is, use my phone to record the screen. I don't know how to record the actual computer screen while I do this. Some people are very good at that, and they have a microphone and everything sounds nice, and you have split screens and stuff like that. I don't know how to do that. So it was actually just something I thought of doing on the fly while I was programming my signal. So I figured I'd just share it with you. So I hope it helps. I mean, I think if I saw a video like this when I was first learning this, it might have helped a lot to kind of get things going. Because even though the manuals are good, they're confusing sometimes. So this is a good way to get going at least. And then there's, obviously so many other things you can do with this that I don't even know yet. So as I learn, I'll try to make more videos and share that with you. All right, I hope you enjoyed this. Thanks.